Hey, friends, welcome back to the Pro Organizers Coach podcast. I'm so excited for today's episode. I have Amanda Walker, and she is the host of the Best Damn Coach podcast. So, thank you, Amanda, for being on the show.
I'm very excited to join you. Thanks for having me.
So, today we are going to talk all about frameworks. And the reason this is so important, in my opinion, and then Amanda's the expert, so she can totally get into this, is we need to know who we're talking to, but we also need to know what our process is so we know how to talk to who we're talking to. And so, that's what we're going to talk about today, why it's important as a business owner to have a signature framework, whether you're a coach or whether you're a professional organizer or whether you're, doing something else. Like we're all
Yeah.
doing something a little different, but it's so important to have that signature framework. So, would you like to introduce us to you a little bit? Let everybody know who you
Sure.
are and what you do.
Yeah, I'd love to. Like just taking it back a little, I started coaching at the age of 15 and not realizing that that was kind of like the domino for the rest of my life, but I was coaching boys basketball, little 5-year-olds. And I started building frameworks then. And the first framework I ever built was to teach them how to shoot a basketball because I realized I can't just talk at them. I needed to give them a step-by-step process. And when I did that, I just watched my basketball team, these little boys just get so pumped and their abilities transform. And what happened then is I started having these parents who were like waitlisting their kids. They wanted to be on my team. They saw this energy, they saw this transformation. And that's what really I didn't see it then, but I've seen it now is that that was kind of the trajectory my life would and like continue through. I've coached CrossFit, I've coached step aerobics. I was a high school teacher. I coached educators. And then when I decided to leave teaching formally to be a stay-at-home mom, which I quickly learned wasn't for me in the long term, I stumbled into entrepreneurship and have been using frameworks really to guarantee client success. That's why I'm passionate about it. I think that entrepreneurship as a whole, the coaching industry specifically, is there's a lot of fluff out there and nobody's here for fluffiness because if
Mhm.
you're not delivering the results that you provide your client, then you really lose out on the ability to generate referrals and retention inside of your business. And so I'm totally geeky on on frameworks and what they lead to. And so, like I said, left teaching, built my business from zero, no marketing experience, sales experience to earning multiple seven figures and counting. And so I just love being able to teach my ways to other people to help them have success too.
I love it. Well, and also, as you're sitting here talking, it's what we do as organizers as well with our clients
Totally.
in their homes, right? As we help them figure out the systems that are going to work for them so it can be repeated. And essentially, that's what you're teaching business owners to do inside of their business is so because then it is able to be repeated. Then it is you're not sitting there at the computer for 2 hours thinking, "Man, what am I doing today? What should I be working on? How should I be doing this?" Which we
Yeah.
all fall into when we don't know what our systems are. So I love that. So can you I know you have what you call the Framework Builder Lab,
Mhm.
which I'm actually getting ready to be joining because I'm so excited
Woohoo.
about it.
We're excited to have you.
Um, so tell me a little bit about how that came about because I'm curious how you fell into like framework. I mean, I know, as a 15-year-old, you're sitting there teaching and that kind of stuff. But, sometimes it takes more steps before we get to
Yeah.
the point of realizing, like, oh, I want to teach
I'm
frameworks.
good at this. Yeah,
Yeah.
they always say like sometimes it's right in front of your face and you never saw it. Like I very much relate to that in this situation. When I started my business, I was actually nutrition and health coaching. I'd been through a journey myself. My undergrad degrees in physiology and biology and my grad school degrees in teaching and coaching. And so I kind of fell into it because people were like, Amanda, can you help me? And so I organically was like, great, I can help people, but I have to build a framework in there so that I could increase the scalability. And very quickly, I grew to like a caseload of, hundreds of clients over time. And there's no way I could have handled that if I didn't have a step-by-step process. And so what happened for me was people then started to see my business growing and were like, hey, I would love to do that too. Could you help me with my business? And so I started transitioning into this, I would say, quote unquote, kind of business coaching mindset space. And I was doing both and I loved it until I realized that I couldn't take my business into the multiple seven figures if I was trying to do both things. I needed to focus. And so I let go of the health and nutrition space, focus primarily on coaches now. And all of my one-to-one work, this same kind of necessity kept coming up is coaches had this like, and not just coaches, but like organizers like yourself. I've worked with literally pastors, bakers. I've worked with mortgage, real estate. Like everybody has frameworks they don't realize. But what's happening is they kind of like they see this process in their brain, like bits and pieces of it, but they have a really hard time putting it into a repeatable order that really makes sense to guarantee results. And so a lot of the fear, imposter syndrome in entrepreneurship comes from like, you don't really know, can you do the things you say and promise your client you're going to do? And when you have a framework in place, that's what happens. And so I was doing this with all of my one-to-one clients. I was taking them through this process, which I call the reverse design method, because as a teacher, this is a really long way of answering this question, but I'm getting there.
No, I love it.
My second year of teaching, I had a fellow teacher come to me and be like, Amanda, your test scores freaking blew us out the water. What, like, are you giving them the test? And I was so peeved at the time, so offended. And I was like, absolutely not. So they asked, like, show us what you're doing. And so while a lot of them were just like showing up to just randomly teach, which makes me sad about the education field, a lot of teachers are
Mhm.
just showing up each day, winging it. What I was doing was methodically starting at the end. Like I studied the final exam, so I knew exactly what they would be required to master. And then I reverse engineered every milestone to every weekly unit quiz to every daily lesson. Like I cared about my students having mastery so that I wasn't like, oh my God, I hope they pass the test. I was like, oh, I know they're going to pass the test. And all that to say, this is how I approach framework building now is we start with the end in mind and reverse engineer everything. And most coaches, most experts, most people in the industry that are working with client services aren't necessarily doing that. And so it really bleeds into everything you do from your client journey to in the
Mhm.
house. I mean, this is why your people, like the people your organizers are helping can't do this for themselves, right? This is why the clutter grows is they don't have a
Mhm.
framework or a system in place to support themselves. And so you guys, like this is so good for organizers.
Mhm.
Like organizers specifically have to have an end in mind and reverse engineer the process. You can't just be like, oh, put this here, put this there. It needs to be repeatable so that when you leave the client's home, they can do it themselves and they don't become dependent on you because that's not really what success is all about.
No, absolutely. And I love that you mentioned that because so there's kind of two folds as an organizer, which I'm sure you've seen in the industry. A lot of people have. You kind of have like I'm going to do it for you the way I would do it in my own home. But then you also have I'm going to do it with you so we can figure out what works for you so then you can maintain moving forward.
Yes,
And
so good.
the second boat is where I am very
That's my
passionate.
pick. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
my pick
yeah,
too, as you talk about
right.
it.
Yeah, because, I mean, if I do it for you, A, I'm gonna have to keep coming back and fixing it. B, you're gonna be calling me for the next 6 months asking me where this is or that is, and you're not learning. Like, to me, organizing, yes, it's like half almost like coaching/therapy, but it's also teaching. Like, there's a teaching piece in there that helps them grow as a human, as a mom, as a wife, as a homeowner. And so, a lot of us weren't taught those things when we were younger. So if we go into the home thinking like, hey, I'm going to help this woman succeed in her life in whatever area she's getting stuck in, then all of a sudden she's able to do those next things and she's no longer stuck,
Good.
like you said, waiting on us to constantly come back and keep fixing it. So yeah, no, absolutely. That's why I'm so excited about this framework piece. So real quick, I know we had talked about like retention and why having a framework is so important. And I really want to make sure we talk about this because I always tell my ladies, I would much rather you kind of under promise and over deliver in a way, like not saying under promise, but
Yeah.
make sure that and the other piece actually, now that I'm sitting here talking about it, is I always try to help my ladies come up with this is what it looks like to work with me statement.
Hmm.
And it's because every organizer is so different. The same with coaches. We all work completely differently. And so if from the jump, from the website to the phone call to the every interaction, if you're not setting the client up to understand what it looks like to work with you, then their expectations are going to be off. they're going to be upset with you somewhere. The expectations, somebody's going to get upset somewhere, instead of, oh, here's what it looks like to work with me. Here's what you can expect from me. Here's how I'm going to support you. And when you have all those things in place, all of a sudden the client's like, oh, you're my person. That's
Mhm.
exactly what I need.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think we call it the surprise and delight in my community is you give the client what the results they're after, and then the challenge I always offer is surprise and delight. And that can be in many ways, but I think that what I equate framework equals results. That's how I really want everybody listening to this conversation think about is when you have a framework, it's a guarantee of progress that your client makes. And to the second piece of why that's important is especially, there are many organizers out there. So then what we also have to understand of framework equals authenticity and uniqueness. We call it the purple duck. What is making you the purple duck in the industry that you serve? And it's not going to be by doing it exactly the way that Samantha does it or Amanda
Mhm.
does it. It's by actually figuring out what makes you different. Like if you lead with your faith, then how do you weave that into everything you do? If you
Mhm.
lead, health and fitness is key and you organize based on that. And that's what's important. Like you're figuring out what your flavor is so that you are different than anybody else. Even if you've gone through a certification or program or something like that, is lots of other people have too. So what makes you different and what is that authenticity piece? And so when we have a framework, it elevates you out differently. And I could go into like a whole other business conversation about
Mhm.
micro problem solving and all these important things. But really, what a framework does is it builds authority and expertise. When you are saying, "I am the," I'm Samantha, and I have the, I don't know, I'm just making up the home first design organizing method as the lame title, but go with it. Um, you know, then we're curious. What that does is it actually elevates you because the audience realizes like you have a method, it's proven, it's repeatable, and unconsciously it makes me trust you more because you have already told me you have a system in place. And so I think a lot of entrepreneurs miss out on that opportunity because they're not talking about or utilizing any of those pieces in their business.
Yeah, well, and actually it got me thinking. So I was just on Amanda's podcast, which you guys should definitely go listen to that. But on there, she coached me. And the reason she coached me is because I've been kind of at this place where I've been wanting to niche in a little more and kind of just get more specific, which kind of to your point of like, it's good to niche in on things. But so what I've realized is where I was getting stuck is I don't want people to do it exactly like me. And so I didn't want to be one of these coaches that was like, oh, so I partner faith, life coaching, and organizing. So now you must do the same. What
Hmm.
I want is for anyone that listens to me to realize, oh, Samantha took her faith, her life coaching, and her organizing. She loves all three. She was able to mesh them together because that's authentically who she is. And so my new passion moving forward is to help people figure out, what are you passionate about that you can partner with organizing so you can stand out. And what I love about this is, honestly, if I can help them figure out what they're passionate about, then they can come to do the framework piece
Yes.
and figure out the system. Then all of a sudden, boom, boom, like you've gotten, your organizing business, what you're passionate about, and how you're going to get client results. And
Totally.
I mean, that's a business, right? And I think a lot of us get stuck in those places of, well, what's the next step? Because when we start a business, and there's so much information out there, obviously, but if what I personally realize, and I don't know if you've realized this, if I'm listening to too many different voices, and I'm getting like a little piece from this person and a little piece from that person, and instead of looking inward and figuring out like, what is it that I love, because then my people can authentically find me, but it also, I'm able to talk about it authentically. It becomes my mission. I've got like energy behind it, versus when I'm trying to talk about what someone else does, I can't talk about it the same way
Mm,
because it's not me.
yeah, for sure. And I think too many entrepreneurs try to compartmentalize themselves. It's, for me, if you were to hop and follow me on IG, you will see a constant theme. Like, I love fitness. It's who I am. You'll see me probably talking about my workout. You'll probably see me using some fitness content. You're going to hear me talk about my faith, right? So what we want to do is like, I believe, this is my own personal opinion, when we try to separate who we are as a person from our business, there is misalignment, which is what we talked about a little bit when you were on my show and we were
Mhm.
doing some open coaching. And so sometimes we just need permission to understand that it's actually really important that we talk about the values that we have and the things that interest us, because we want to attract people that share similar values. So if you're not talking about your faith and it's a key element of who you are, and then I sign up to work with you, and the first step is like, well, let's identify a piece of scripture that's really key to like how we want to move forward in our work together. You're like, whoa, pump the brakes. Like, this isn't going to work, right?
Mhm.
Same thing if in my community, I am holding the space for all of my coaches, like to prioritize their health and fitness, because I know they're not going to be great business owners if that is not part of the process. And so I think that with the organizing, same deal. Yes, you're in somebody's home. It might feel like all organizers have to do it the same way, but it's not
Mm-mm.
at all true.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you're talking about. So for me and my journey up until now, I've definitely realized how much my mental health and my emotional stability and intelligence are a huge part of being able to, serve my clients the way I need to run a business. Because if not, you end up in burnout mode and all sorts of stuff, right?
Sure.
So I've completely made sure that that part is important. And what literally just over the past few months I've been realizing, I probably, because used to I was like, oh, well, for 3 hours every session, I'm like moving and, lifting. And like, I just consider that my workout, right? It's not working anymore. It is not working. So now I'm at a place where I'm like, okay, it's time to legit, even though I'm like working out essentially with clients and physically moving, I need to also incorporate like healthy eating and some cardio and some other
Yes,
things.
yes.
So I love that you incorporate that piece also, because as entrepreneurs, if we don't take care of ourselves, our business is never, ever going to go where it needs to go.
Yeah, and for me, that's not what success is looks like. Like for me, if I were to put like my dream day, we talk a lot about this. My dream day is like my dream day includes getting a workout in, journaling, morning time, quiet time, reading, prayer, good meals, healthy, nutrient dense, good meals, and then the work stuff, right?
Hmm.
And I'm so passionate about this because I've just seen so many people get lost in business and they're sitting, they're sedentary. I know you may be moving, but in my world, I actually sit like, on my coaching days quite a bit.
Hmm.
And then they kind of lose themselves in this effort to make the money and to grow the business. And so, doesn't that's not the long-term vision of success that I'm looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. And I think, and what I love about this framework piece, like back to that, is it literally feels like it has essentially like the answers, right? Of like what each next step needs to be. So, like for me, I just, released the course for them to start their organizing business. Okay, well, now you have the steps to start your organizing business. But like I've told everyone, the up until launch is one thing. After launch is a whole different ball game, because that's when you actually start working with clients. You're trying to get client, like it's a completely different set of skills in a way that you need to work with clients and to, like you said, get them results and have a framework. But for a lot of us, that imposter syndrome like
Mm-hmm.
kicks our butt. Like we get the business launched, we're like, oh, okay, I've got it launched, I'm ready to go, life's going to be great now, and then crickets.
Yes.
And so then all of a sudden you're like, wait, did I do something wrong? Is this not how it's, so I always tell my ladies, I'm like, listen, you got to give it minimum 9 months of like, because you just launched a brand new business into the world. Like you have to give it that time. But what I love about your framework is, yes, you're giving it that time, but while you're giving it that time, you also have almost like another pillar to like steady yourself and stand on.
Mm. Well, I think that the issue often in the beginning with imposter syndrome is it comes from a genuine place of like we want to do well by our clients. Like we
Mhm.
want to do the right thing, we want to guarantee results. And so a lot of people fall into the trap of, I'll just feel more confident when I serve more clients. But as they're trying to get more clients, that lack of confidence is causing them to not show up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they feel like the only way I find clients is social media, which is totally incorrect, by the way. Um, what I find is that when my students build their framework, it catapults their confidence and breaks them free of the imposter syndrome they've been feeling, because you don't need to coach thousands of clients to figure out whether or not you do well. You need the framework first. And now, you have this process operating in the background that that almost acts just like as your BFF through the process. Like, I got this thing that I can rely on. And if I'm feeling a little floundering, I know the next step to take. And so I think that imposter syndrome, I've learned, it never goes away. It's
Mm-hmm.
not, it's just his next level new devil, to be honest. Like, there's always going to be that temptation of saying, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy of. And you just have to learn to constantly take that and put it in the back seat of the bus and just like refuse to allow it like a seat in your lap. But it is number one is the acceptance of it's there for everyone, no matter what level you're operating on.
Yeah. Well, I love that because it's true. Like I literally, just created my first course and just launched it. And when I created my community and I launched it, and when I started the organizing business, and like every single time that you go into the next step of business, there is this sense of, like you said, imposter syndrome. And we can either choose, because it's a choice. Our thoughts are our choice. And so is that thought serving me of, oh, I'm not good at this, or, oh, I can't do this? Or can you choose a better thought that's going to serve you in a way of, no, I'm going to do this thing and then we'll figure it out as we go. But like for me, progress over perfection is a huge thing I constantly have to remind myself. And that helps me to kind of put that imposter syndrome behind and just be like, no, like I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it. And then if it works, great. If it doesn't, we'll pivot, we'll move forward. Like we're going to keep going. But the
Yeah.
fact that I got it done, I'm going to be proud of that. And those little small wins, I'm going to celebrate, because I think a lot of us, we wait until those huge wins or those big moments that we think are somewhere down the road. And what I've learned is a lot of times they're not. Like the big moments we think are going to be huge end up not being big. But then these little small things, if we could learn to appreciate those, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, like I really am doing this thing, or I really am, like it gives you
Yeah.
confidence in ways that, before being a business owner, I had no clue about.
Yeah.
So real quick, I know I want to talk about the framework and how it can help with things like freebies, doing a workshop, because I know for a lot of us, especially as organizers, even though we're local, like you said, a lot of us are on social media. But what I've been trying to help my women with more so is social media can be like your portfolio where people can see the work you can do. But I think we're missing a huge opportunity if we don't have some sort of like workshop or freebie or something for people to get to know us and build that know, like, and trust factor on our, even if we're not going to do an email list with it yet and we're not ready for that, that's okay. But still having that option to where we can teach for 20, 30 minutes or talk someone through something as a free gift to them. I think we're missing a huge opportunity if we don't create that. But I think for a lot of us, we don't know what to create. So can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about
Sure.
that?
I mean, let's go high level for a moment and just understand how businesses operate and and sales psychology is. Most people aren't just discovering you on Instagram and then buying your services. That does happen, although it is rare, or coming from a cold traffic ad or something like that. What we need to do is warm up to a purchase, and just think how this operates in your own life. Like, you see a pair of jeans, you don't just buy them typically. You want to go in, you want to try them on, or you order them, you try them on, you decide you're going to keep them, right? And so this is essentially what our customers have to do for us. They are trying us on consistently. And I find so many coaches will come to me and they'll say, I'm just not getting clients. Tell me about your what I call ecosystem strategy. Tell me
Mhm.
about your lead generation strategy. Like, well, I'm posting on Instagram all the time. And that is just a way to build awareness of your business. And it does deepen the opportunity to build rapport. But we want to invite them closer. They can be a voyeur of your content and never show face. They really, to listen to our podcast, to look at our social media, they never have to raise a hand, right? So that we know they're there. It's crazy.
Mhm.
We spend all this time and energy. I spend a great deal of financial resources to host a really fantastic podcast. And I don't really know who's listening. There's no way for me to know. I can count the numbers, but I don't really know. And so what I
Mhm.
have to do then is say, here are some ways to come deeper with me into my ecosystem where I got to actually see you and help you more directly. And so that could be through webinars, which are my number one methodology that I use, or workshops and live trainings. It could be a freebie. It could be a low tiered offer called a SLO, like a self liquidating offer where you're running ads to it. It doesn't even have to be ads. It could be just a $27 taster, which actually is
Mhm.
my favorite over a freebie these days, just to be honest. But what we're trying to do is build your authority. We're trying to say, Samantha is an expert. Here is this value I can give. And what it's doing internally is it's helping qualify the leads and letting them realize, like, oh, she does know what she's talking about.
Mhm.
And can I keep learning from her? And then beyond that, a step further would be like not only just hosting the event, but also creating a space where they can continually be nurtured, like your email
Mhm.
newsletter or ongoing podcasts. And if you're a podcaster, being freaking consistent in your podcast and not just recording episode and then going away for 2 months. So there's things that we want to do because the life cycle of a client isn't just meet today, purchase tomorrow. There are people that have been in my world and taken multiple workshops in a year before they become a client, or 2 years, because of the timing or whatever the case is. So just be in it for like, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, but we have to keep adding value for us to stay relevant in a potential customer's life.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and there's different levels of value, right? Like Instagram or, social media to me is almost like this low tier, like, and I'm I'm not a huge social media person either, so that's kind of why. But to me, like, it's a lot of effort with very little like reward, in my opinion. Yes, it's great to have it out there because that's how people see if you're legit. But again, to me, it almost feels like the first layer, right?
Yeah,
But
for
like
sure.
you're saying, then that's when you bring them into like, hey, let me do it, like, a teaching or I heard a statistic about specifically local business owners and that they did it was I forget where it was done, but they polled a bunch of people. Long story short, is that they were 60% more likely to purchase from you as a service-based provider if you had at least just a video or two on YouTube where they could, or like a workshop, just some sort of video that they could find you and listen while they're interested. Because that know, like, and trust factor, the second they see your face and they get to know you, because what we do as organizers, and it's the same as coaching, it's personal. Like, you have to know that you can trust this person before are opening up all your drawers and letting them into your home and telling them your most, you know, the things that you barely tell your husband. Now all of a
Mm,
sudden you're going to be talking to this person about. And so you have to make sure. But as the business owner, if we don't make sure we have enough, like, the stuff out there that will cultivate that trust, they're never gonna wanna purchase from us. They are gonna find someone else that does have that stuff out there, in my opinion.
yeah, I mean, let's talk video content even while we're here. I mean, this is like a geeky coaching thing, but it applies towards your organizers. I mean, it's really interesting because so many people want to compartmentalize this coaching thing separate, but there's so many people that don't necessarily call themselves a coach who are doing coach-like things, right? When
Mhm.
you're an organizer, you're going to quickly find that you go into somebody's house that they're going to need coaching because there's going to be so many emotional things, internal struggles that come up, or you're going to tell them to do something and they're not going to do it once you leave, right? That's where coaching happens. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist. People need help in the implementation. But something I often remind my coaches about, especially when it comes to their methodologies for inviting people into their business, is that if you've never heard of the 738 55 rule, is that 55% of the way we as humans communicate is through nonverbal. So that's my facial expressions right now, my body language, what I'm wearing, my skin tone, my hair, my makeup. And so when we inherently know this, like if we walk into a room or something, we definitely feel like, oh, she's my person kind of vibe. And that's only
Mhm.
based on nonverbal. So think about how many times you've made assumptions about people and it's only nonverbal. 7% of the way we communicate is words. So it's
Oh.
actually less about what we're saying. The other 38 comes from tonality, basically, and pitch of the voice. So this is why if you ever like I have two Aussie shepherds and I can say like, you're so annoying to me right now, right? But I say it in a cute little voice and they're like, I love you, mom. I love you, mom, right? But the same thing happens. Think about, when my husband sometimes will reply to me and he'll say words that I like feel kind of rough, but it's not actually what he said, it's how he said it. I'm like, ooh, it's your tone right now. And so we have to think about how do we leverage that in our business? And that is by video facing opportunities. And a lot of us are afraid to show up that way, but I think you're missing the whole point really of leveraging that. So if you're just posting pretty Canva graphics, we don't really get
Mhm.
all of you. If you're just doing a free PDF, we don't really get all of you. Even going to podcasting, this is why, right, we repurpose our podcast on YouTube as well, so that you
Mhm.
can also see me. You can go watch this interview and catch the nonverbal component too. So it's so important when it comes to living in this space of services, of us giving client services, because it does matter.
Yeah, well, and we want them. I try to remember, like, I want them to be open with me, like my clients that specifically with organizing. I want them to trust me and know me and all the things. But if I'm not willing to put myself out there for them to get to know me, I can't expect something out of them that I'm not willing to do myself. And that's
100%.
where, yeah, and that's where as a business owner, like business will grow you very quickly. I have a lady I'm helping right now that she just started a business, and there's a few things we were coaching on, and I was like, listen, part of your business growing is you have to do the inner work as well, but you have to be willing to, like, step out on the ledge sometimes. And like when I first started my business, I was spending time with God one day up at like my spot, and the Holy Spirit said, jump. And I had been praying and begging to quit my job for 8 years that I'd been at for over a decade working with autistic children. And when he finally said jump, I was like, Wait, hold on, what? Wait, and then I was like immediately like, "Never mind, I'm just kidding, like, all these prayers,
Yay,
no
no, no,
thank
I
you,
don't want
I'm
to do
good."
that.
Yeah. And so then but once I finally did jump, it started working the way it was supposed to, and then it was trusting the next step and trusting the next step. But until you take that first step, you don't even know what those next steps are, and a lot of us hold ourselves back even just with the smallest little step that we're
Yeah.
knowing that we need to do.
Yeah, totally. I mean, at
Yeah.
at any point, anybody who's created success when it comes to business has had that moment of leap, and are honestly are all better for it. We want it
Mhm.
to be perfect. We want the revenue to be at the point that we want it to be, to like this perfect seamless transition. And sometimes, like, the timeline is never on our time. That doesn't change when
Mm-mm.
you run a business, but you just have to be willing to bet on yourself, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness, this has been so good. Okay, so tell everyone where they can find you and all the goodness that you're bringing into the world, please.
Yeah, I'd love to connect. Just feel free to just send me a DM. My best way to do that is on Instagram. My handle is a walk my way. And while I talk all things coaching, I think anything, through my podcast is definitely going to land in the hearts of your organizers too. So you can search Best Damn Coach on any podcast platform. And if you're
Mhm.
interested in learning more about frameworks, I do host a weekly workshop where I teach some of the mistakes around framework building. And you can sign up for free there at amanda-walker.com/framework and get signed up.
I love it. Yeah, and what I love also about the way that you've set up your course with the Framework Builder Lab is it's a cheaper price point if you want to just do it at your own pace, but you also have this add-on of like you can add on coaching sessions that are to where you can support us as we're going through the course. And that's
Yes.
actually why I've not signed up just yet because I'm like, I'm gonna make sure I am at every Wednesday. So like
As
I'm
you
gonna make
should.
right, like, and I'm
Yes.
gonna make sure I do that. But I love that you offered that as like an add-on, or go ahead and you can DIY this thing and get it started. And a lot of the stuff that you've been doing, I'm like so impressed with. And obviously, I mean, it's you, it's absolutely you, but it's also your framework. Like, I know that as I'm looking at like your
True.
different stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is where the framework stuff comes in. And I'm sure having that in your own life is just like you said, having a BFF of just like, girl, you got this. Here's the next step. Keep
Yes.
on going.
Yeah.
Oh
I
my
feel like
goodness.
I'm in a place where it's just like your people, when you get into a place in business where you people go through your programs and they're going to come out getting what they wanted, it's just such an amazing place to be. And your business starts to honestly sell itself. And
Mhm.
I think your people, can benefit that. And eventually nobody's wants to do just one-to-one work, right? We want to
Mhm.
scale out, and a framework definitely guides that process flawlessly.
Yeah, well, and what I love too, real quick, and then we'll wind up. But what I love about the idea of the framework is my plan is to actually take the DIY part a couple of times but one being the mindset of like for my organizing clients and like in my organizing business, but then take it again with the mindset of like, okay, now let me build out my framework for like POC and for all the stuff I'm doing
Mhm.
online. And I think it's amazing that like you've taken something that can be used across like any platform. Like, even if someone's still working a 9 to 5 and they're like, how do I get along with my coworkers? But I don't know, like there's
Yeah.
so many different
Yes.
things that you can use. Cause like you said, you taught little boys how to play basketball
Yep.
using a framework, and then,
Yes.
teaching. And I don't know, a lot of my listeners are teachers. Like, those are my people. And so obviously those are yours too. So I know that
Yes.
they are going to
Yes.
love the framework. But yeah, thank you so much for being on the show. And
I'm
for
so
those
grateful
of
to connect.
yeah, and for those of you listening, go listen to the episode where Amanda coaches me, and make sure to go sign up for her stuff. I know you will not be disappointed. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you so much.